Bull, I was listening to a podcast with Ryan Russillo and Todd McShay yesterday, and they were talking about how the talent of a quarterback is part of the equation, but the system into which they are drafted is the other part. There are talented quarterbacks that have gone through bad situations and never panned out on the NFL level, which made me think of this as a possible question for us today.
Yeah.
The Browns are obviously in the market for a quarterback, whether it's 2, 33, wherever.
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe the organization currently has the proper infrastructure in place for a rookie quarterback to succeed?
Before we answer that, I'm curious, did they give any examples?
They talked about so they talked about Bo Nix getting drafted into the Denver Broncos with Sean Payton and him being put in a position right away to succeed, as opposed to somebody, and I'm trying to think of it, they used Jamarcus Russell as, for example.
Right, but don't you think Jamarcus Russell would have failed anywhere?
No, I don't know. No, I mean,
I think it's a bad example.
They also use Justin Fields as a possible example.
So if Jamarcus Russell goes to an organization that has a culture, I mean, if he went to Pittsburgh or New England when Belichick was running things, I mean, don't you think it would have been different?
I don't know. Some people, I don't know. I mean, I think there are certainly some quarterbacks where it matters where you go. I think there's some on both ends of the spectrum. I think Joe Burrow was going to be good wherever he ended up. I don't think the Bengals had much to do with it. And I think Jamarcus Russell was going to be crap wherever he was. Now, I think there's probably a lot of guys in between that it matters. But I think there's some on the extreme sides.
I think there's differences, too, because some guys, you put them in an environment where they're, susceptible to bad behavior.
That's true. Yeah,
because sometimes you got to just keep the player away from it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I know when I was a rookie, I'll say my story. Like, I went to a team that was a bad team. Like, it was bad guys, guys that are in prison now. Are on that team.
Right.
And that was the culture that was in that locker room.
Yeah.
And honestly, I got caught up in it a little bit, and I was like goody two-shoes kid coming from Ohio State, Jim Tressel, you know what I mean, captain of Ohio State, and I didn't feel like I fit in, so I tried to sort of fit in, and it ended up kind of costing me a little bit. You know what I mean? So again, it's one example, but I'm 100% of the mindset that the place you go that drafts you ultimately dictates your career and the success you have, no matter how good you are, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So, Dustin, with that being said, do the Browns currently have the infrastructure in place for any of these rookie quarterbacks to potentially thrive?
It's hard to say yes to that. It is.
Tell me about it.
The reality is they haven't had a good infrastructure. I think that Kevin Stefanski is a really good coach, and he's a likable guy.
Yeah.
But who the hell knows? I mean, the stories that we've heard from that locker room throughout the years, and even last year at times with some of the teammates, the players on the roster, like I really don't know if they have enough winners in that locker room to be able to turn the page and have that young player be able to come in and help be a part of that.
What makes Kevin a good coach to you?
It's a great question.
I know, because Bull said it a lot.
I do say that because I think Kevin's a good guy. I think genuinely he cares about his players. I think he's a very smart football guy. He's had to earn everything in this business to get to this point. I know him a little bit, personally, and I like him. I would like to play for him. I would. Mm-hmm. So that to me says a lot about the person's character. And on top of that, the football IQ I think is there. Now, he may have too much stacked against him to be able to succeed here in Cleveland because it is so difficult. And Tyvis, I mean, you're around the program now more than I am. I was more in the past, but it's a really tough place to win.
Yeah.
Because there are barriers in place that don't help you. Mm-hmm. And that comes from the top down.
Yeah. I think to answer this question, does Cleveland have the infrastructure in place for a rookie quarterback to succeed? I am with Dustin. It's hard to say yes. I do think Kevin is a good coach. I think having Tommy Rees as the OC, I think that's great. And who's the quarterback coach?
Bill Musgrave.
Musgrave. I think having those three together could help a rookie quarterback. However, where I struggle is the rest of the team. That's the part. Like, how far is this team? Have they adopted the loser mentality? Have they? Can they overcome that? Can it be if things start off bad last year? Do they have the guys on the team to be like, this ain't last year, this ain't the past, we ain't going down that road? Do they have that, or do they have that? This is just how it is around here. Like if that is the culture right now, if they don't have those guys that can turn that culture, it don't matter if you go get Tom Brady.
Well, you guys played, so you tell me. Is it the coach that changes the culture, or is it the players? Or
well, it's really the players.
Right, because people always talk about it with the coach. And maybe in some cases it is the coach. I don't know. But
the coach gets you excited because you can see the vision. But the players, especially the leaders, the quarterback, if that's a fiery guy, it bleeds through the rest of the team.
Yes.
Like the one of the things is when I was with Russell was always a really good high energy guy. Russell was very good at motivating people. Jimmy Garoppolo, believe it or not, Jimmy G was really good. He could have you run through a brick wall.
By that.
And Jimmy G was his pregame speeches, great.
Yeah.
That motivated the rest of the team. Guys was like, all right, we want to go out there and we want to succeed. But if you don't have that guy, if the best player on the team is a quiet guy and don't really say things, like for example, personally, I've only been around Deshaun Watson one time. I was in Houston for 1 week, so take it with a grain of salt. Very cool guy. Conversations in the locker room, great. When it comes to getting ready for a game, I don't know if he can give that pregame speech that's gonna get me fired up. I don't think I'm gonna be like, I'm about to run through a wall. Like, I don't think he doesn't come off as that type of guy to me.
Yeah.
Whereas Jameis did. So Jameis gets out there, they go out there and they beat Baltimore or whatever the case may be.
Can you win consistently without a quarterback that is that type of leader?
Can you win consistently?
Yeah, without that type of quarterback. Even if he's not the most talented guy in the world.
If he's not the most talented guy, but he's a fiery guy?
Yeah.
Yeah, they did it with Baker.
Yeah. I mean, but
Baker's pretty talented.
But Baker is talented.
We denigrate his skill set, man.
No. I'm saying as far as like a top 5 quarterback. I think that's what he was saying.
Well, but I would say that Baker is probably a much better leader now than he was here in Cleveland. I'm not saying he was bad in Cleveland.
I don't know that.
He was up and down in Cleveland. He had some good moments.
I agree. But he had that stuff to him though.
And he clearly has it in Tampa.
Yeah,
I think that his, what would you call that? The fire in the belly, if you will.
It was great
that he's had. What needed to be sort of reined in a little bit, because I think it can be a detriment if it's too much. You know what I mean? And he now has more of a calm, cool, collected attitude, and then picks his spots where you step in and because he had a little bit of a temper, I think.
Yeah. Everything was about that chip on the shoulder.
It became too personal that it hurt the team. I think now he's learned.
You know what settled that?
What's that?
That contract.
Yeah.
It was finally like the first time outside. I know first round draft pick, but it was like the first time where somebody was like, "We believe in you."
Right.
Like, here's the money.
Yeah. I mean, it is hard to have a chip on your shoulder when you're the number 1 overall pick.
Right.
But I think he kept creating. He felt like that was what he had to do.
He was with the Browns, so it was like, I gotta have a chip on my shoulder.
He had the walk-on mentality his whole life,
and
so he felt like he had to always create that, even if it was superficial.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And again, it was up and down. Like when things were going well, when he was playing well in 2020, it was a positive. Yeah. When things went sour the next year and he had a bad attitude,
it was terrible.
and he pissed off teammates, then it was bad. But now, after going through what he went through between the injury season, which was a bad season, the next year, which was a total disaster, he is, found his sweet spot, it seems, in terms of how to, this wasn't really about Baker, but it was
just about I say, with the coaching staff, I think is right. I think they, for the most part, I know that's hard to believe with what we just seen last year, but I think those 3 coaches that I named for a rookie quarterback, I think that those will be great because you got 2 guys that was in college that understands the game. You got Kevin, who's a really good, smart guy that can really talk to you about the NFL level, and I think those 3 guys collectively can get a rookie quarterback to play really well for a rookie season. I worry about the 52 other people that's already on the roster. Like, that's where I think it's sour a little bit.
Obviously in the last couple of months, I've been up and down on my thoughts on Kevin Stefanski. I had always thought he was a very good coach. I kind of lost faith in him a little bit this year. I decided in the end, I thought he should have been fired, and then I was like, well, I kind of thought he was a good coach before this year. Let's give him another year. But I'll say this, again, when you asked Dustin, like, what makes him a good coach, it's funny to me because every time that question gets asked.
It's a good question, isn't it?
The answer from somebody is almost, it wasn't from Dustin, which was good, but almost every person that answers that question says, well, he's two-time coach of the year. As if that means he's a good coach.
So can I just add one more thing to this that I want to add to my take on it?
Yeah.
Is that why is he a good coach? Because no one's won here. And he's been the first coach to come in here and be able to show that they can win and they can turn some things around. Yeah, it's gone backwards, I think, in the last couple seasons. But to be able to do that as young as him, you have to be a good coach.
Right, and I have always...
Coach of the year stuff, that's bullshit. I don't care about that.
Yeah, that's
everyone
so
wins
stupid.
That. Bad coaches win that,
Right, it's just who had a surprising season.
Right.
That's all it is.
Pretty much.
Has Andy Reid ever won Coach of the Year?
He may have.
I'll tell you one sec.
He may have, but whatever. The point is, like...
By the way, Rob Parker, with one of the worst takes of all time yesterday, saying Andy Reid should step down as head coach.
He has won Coach of the Year.
Okay, how many times?
Once, and it was 22 years ago.
Yeah, once.
Was it
the
Philly?
guy's clearly the best coach in the NFL.
22
2002.
But anyway, like I've said this a million times. You guys have probably heard me say this. I have always felt, and it's kind of similar to what I said about like Jamarcus Russell and Joe Burrow. I think there's a couple, very few quarterbacks that it almost doesn't matter what team they go to, and there's a couple quarterbacks from a bad perspective, and then most of them are going to be better or worse. I think it's the same thing with coaches. I think there's 3 or 4 coaches that are great, will have a level of success no matter what kind of talent they have. I think there's 3 or 4 coaches that suck. They should have never been head coaches and will never have success anywhere. And I think there's probably 20-something coaches that are some level of good, and it will ebb and flow based on their experience, how patient you are with them, and how much talent they have at that time. And I think, in my opinion, Kevin's not in either of those extreme groups. He's in that group of most coaches in the NFL. He's a good coach, not a great coach. He's not Andy Reid. He's not Sean McVay. He's not, reinventing the wheel. My biggest beef really that's piled up with Kevin Stefanski is just we've seen now a pattern of when it ended badly with Baker. At the time, I was so down on Baker and I believed in Stefanski that I didn't open my mind, if I'm really being honest about it now, thinking about it, I didn't open my mind to the possibility that, to me, it was 100% Baker's fault, the way it ended. In my mind, it was all Baker, because I was down on Baker, I had soured on him, I was sick of his nonsense, and he had a bad year, and I was like, well, this is... But really, now we saw how it ended with him. Obviously, Kevin Stefanski and Deshaun Watson had a wonky relationship. And even with Jameis, like, all of a sudden Jameis becomes the quarterback, and now
you give
a play calling. There were rumors circulating that media members have heard this, that Stefanski didn't like Jameis. So now it's 3 quarterbacks that there was something there. So maybe Stefanski deserves at least some level of blame for why these quarterback-coach relationships have soured.
If you're the head coach, you deserve blame and credit.
100.
Like you got to get 100% of all of it.
That's right.
Both ways.
Yeah. That's right.
I just, when you put it that way, I think Kevin is one of those guys that he sees it a certain way. I think he's open to listen to people's opinion. He's not one of those guys. After the couple of times that I've had conversations with him, he is very open to listening to what you have to say, and he won't discredit you in any way or anything like that. He comes off as a really good guy in that situation. Yeah. However, I think that for some odd reason, it's just a disconnect. Like, it's been a disconnect between him and quarterbacks to where he wants something to be done a certain way, and for some odd reason, that quarterback just don't get it done. And I don't understand why they can't get on the same page with that.
Yeah.
But that's what gives me hope because of the two hires of having Tommy Rees and having Musgrave. It's like, okay, you got two guys that, okay, maybe Kevin, I said this a couple weeks ago, I said maybe Kevin just can't communicate and get fully to a quarterback what he wants. He can't articulate it correctly. Maybe. I don't know. I'm just guessing here.
Sure.
But maybe he can say it to Tommy Rees or Musgrave, and they can be like, I get it. And then I can say it to him, and now he understands it. So, boom, now we connect.
Right.
So I think that those two hires were very important to have. I know Tommy Rees was here last year, but he was working with tight ends. Now that he's back.
It was his first year.
Yeah, now that he's the OC and things like that, he'll have much more say. Obviously, he'll probably have more talk with quarterbacks and things like that. But I think that is going to help the quarterback be successful more because it's just maybe – we say all these great things about Kevin, but maybe that's the one thing that he just can't articulate exactly what he wants from his quarterback. Yeah. But now these other two people can.
Yeah,
they can be the translators.
I was just going to say the same thing.
In a way, right?
Pretty much.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, and I think also
because what gets me is everybody knows that Kevin Stefanski hates turnovers, yet every quarterback has turned the ball over.
Yeah.
So like,
except for Jacoby,
there's clearly some type of disconnect.
Deshaun didn't turn it over. The one thing he didn't do.
Well, yeah, but Deshaun played so bad he didn't turn it over. And I think part of the issue, and this will be gone this year because he won't. I mean, he'll technically still be on the roster, but he won't be there. There was the organization, especially this past season, was handling Deshaun Watson with kid gloves, and
that was a big mistake.
I think that was a huge mistake, and that's out the window.
Yeah.
And maybe that was part of some of the, the frustration and part of the miscommunication.
That's how the players respond. Obviously, there's certain players that from being around people. Like, there's some people you can yell at and some people you can't yell at. Like, maybe Deshaun is just one of those guys that, like, if you coach him too hard, like, he just crumbles. So, like, maybe that's why he was like, well, this isn't typically how I coach, but for him, I have to make this exception. So, like, that's what it was. Like, I was hearing the rumors about interceptions and
they weren't pointing out his mistakes.
Yeah, all that stuff. So it was like, okay, maybe he was just one of those guys that couldn't handle those things, which I'm not saying that's right or wrong or none of that. But everybody's different.
If you're a quarterback and you can't handle criticism in the video room, that's a problem.
I understand. I'm just saying, like, certain people are different. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
People's different. Me, you can cuss me out all you want. It doesn't bother me because I understand what the message is. Sometimes I need to be cussed out. One thing I don't do is I don't take compliments well. I don't.
I can see that.
I don't. Like, I'd rather you just tell me the bad. I don't really want to hear the good.
Well, that's not good. You got to work on that.
I know. There's a lot of things I got to work on.
We all do. All right.